Hey folks, welcome to episode 3 of the Roundtable. Today's podcast, we have a very special guest, but before I introduce him, just a quick note on the podcast. I want this place to be an energetic, open forum for any and all ideas, as smart, as intellectual, as thought-provoking, or as, dumb and stupid as well. I just want a place for everyone to talk and express their ideas here. So without further ado, let me introduce our guest today, Mr. Walter Davis.
It's great to be here, Rudy. I'm glad you brought me on.
Thank you so much. Hey, it's the least I could do because also, to give also our viewing audience some context, I was actually on your podcast.
Yes, you were.
A while back.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of it. I think it was You're not wrong, but you could be more right. I think that was the name of the podcast.
Gold.
I thought it's fantastic, to be honest with you. It just is, it sucks that there's not enough money to keep it going after 3 episodes.
Yeah. I love it. It was great. It was great because a bit more of it was kind of more political focus, right?
Yeah.
But I always thought it was just a great catchphrase for it and just a fun.
I thought that was a really good one too. That's what Drew came up with. He just kind of brought it along. He said that's kind of like the gist of it. It's just really just pedantic to that degree. That's kind of what we were going for. So I'm like, okay, yeah, we'll roll with that. And so
I love it. And also, so pretty much since that podcast, we haven't really gotten a chance to sit down, just talk, catch up.
Yeah.
So maybe walk me through a little bit about what you've been up to since that time. I actually don't know exactly when that podcast was. Yeah. But just, what have you been up to?
Yeah. So anyway, I graduated from the University of Texas with a degree in political science, moved to Dallas with my girlfriend at the time. Then the pandemic hit and we moved back home. She's in grad school and we're kind of doing our separate thing now. So for the most part, what I've kind of been doing is re-enrolled in school. I'm looking to get some type of STEM masters. That would be really nice just for a stable career and to move to a city again and just kind of go from there. So that's really what I've been up to.
Dude, that's exciting. And that's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm always just a fan of just education, learning more and everything. What attracted you to the STEM field and more in that direction?
Yeah. So in general, so I thought I wanted to be a lawyer for a little while and I got my LSAT score back and it was okay, by any means, I can definitely go to law school if I ever decide to. I'm not going to go to Harvard or anything, but I don't know, it just kind of kept dawning on me and it just kind of became less and less of an attractive idea, especially if you kind of don't go to one of those top 20 schools or 30 schools, it's kind of harder just to get your foot into the door. And so from there, it's just well, I don't know if I want to have a life where I'm just constantly struggling and working and I'm not even sure this is something I want to do in the long term. And so at that point I thought, well, what else could I possibly do besides law, since that's what a lot of my major was for. And so I was really attracted to the idea of doing economics. I didn't know if there was a career for it or anything along those lines, but I'd taken, all those courses while I was in college and I was good at it. And I felt math has never been something that has really scared me. So yeah, I was just looking at it and just the amount of prerequisites they want you to have for an economics master's degree takes 5 or 6 years of foresight. I'm not even kidding you. Wow. Some of the math that they want was measure theory and these take so many up to Calc 4 and prerequisites. And the hard thing about that is you can't take Calc 1 and 2 together. You got to take it 1 semester, 2 semester, 3 semester, 4 semester. So I was okay, maybe that's not a good idea for me anymore. And so I started talking to just several of my friends who were, kind of in the STEM field, what else could I do? And, the common thing they all said, was if they could do it all over again, they would really look into statistics, just because statistics and data are kind of where a lot of, just the economy is going at this point. Yeah. Every company needs someone to run data for them, someone to kind of process all of it and just do that. So that's attracted me. That's kind of what I'm aiming towards right now. And just the prerequisites were doable. It's just really Calc 3 and linear algebra. And so I was I can do that.
Yeah.
So we're seeing how that goes. That is very subject to change though. So that's just the plan right now.
But I like what you said though about, a couple things. So first, yeah, it's almost like the realization, because I also was interested in becoming a lawyer and going down that route as well.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that, I very much respect the profession. It's amazing. But I figured it was more of a realization to me. I don't know if this was also to you, that not just because you could be good at something should be that's the route you should choose, right?
Yeah.
And then it's interesting what you say about the other major there, where it's almost the barrier to entry for economics, right? It's so high.
Yeah.
Right? Especially when you're talking about not even being able to do all these other math requirements at the same time simultaneously. You have to do them one after another, which just elongates the process much more. But to be able to kind of pivot and reposition yourself into the statistics, I think is very smart, because especially with all the, well, not just startups, but just the higher focus now on artificial intelligence and just the amount of computational processing needed in so many just, I mean, even I know it's kind of simple, but even just going on an Instagram product, right? When someone launches a product or service on Instagram, being able to properly, like, not just get the analytics, but know how to best use them and like use that strategy for it.
Yeah. And that was kind of one of the biggest things to me also. And, that's what I actually had a conversation about Justin with, whenever you kind of connected us, and he kind of told me the reality of what it's like going to law school, being a lawyer, and just kind of what the barrier of entry is. And yeah, it just seems like what I got out of the conversation is, law has become such an oversaturated market. Every liberal arts grad and their mother wants to do it. And it's because it's plausible, there's no math in it. It's very much so like utilizing all the liberal arts skills that you can have. It makes a lot of sense as to why you'd want to do that. It's why I wanted to do it. But yeah, it's just, like I said, and that kind of creates an even stronger barrier to entry, because if you're not going to one of those top like 20 schools, 30 schools, like who are you? Like honestly, like we can, and like why would a company like take a risk on someone like me? I kind of get it. Like Malcolm Gladwell did a podcast on the LSAT, and he's critiquing it, but one of the biggest critiques was like law, like Supreme Court clerks won't hire anyone who didn't go to an Ivy League school or Stanford.
Wow.
And, that seems really elitist at first, but then you think about it and it's like, well, these are some of the most important cases being decided at the time. And there's a lot of precedent and just, just political power lying in these decisions that they make. They can't risk it. This is almost like a sure thing that you're getting, like someone who's just willing to sit down, shut up, and do the work in front of them. That's kind of what this type of certification is signaling to them, is that they can handle the large workload and like they don't have to worry about it. Even though Gladwell kind of goes on to show that one of Scalia's best interns went to like Ohio State or something like that, but like it's just like, why would you take the risk is kind of what he was saying.
Yeah, no, and just a quick side note so people know who Justin is. Justin, one of my best friends, amazing lawyer, who might be on the podcast soon. Keep an eye for that. But what you're saying about that, where it's almost as if by having the diploma from an Ivy League school is almost like a shorthand for these higher, well, you said Supreme Courts, right?
Yeah.
In those.
Yeah.
For them to actually, it's just a shorthand for them to know, okay, they almost, it's like basically like an unsaid prerequisite.
Yeah. It's just like a signal, that's basically what it's showing to them. And, it makes the decision a lot easier for them. And, it's almost like triggering that click war response in your brain to where you don't really have to think too hard about like who you're getting. You're like, yeah, just bring them on. I don't care about their name. Like, I just care about like what law school they went to, basically.
Right. Now, going back just a little, because I know if there's one common thing that you and I have as far as an interest in, it's in rhetoric.
Yes.
And just like the power, almost the psychology of rhetoric as well.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me, I mean, I don't know how briefly you want to be, but just give me your relationship to rhetoric.
Yes. So I'm a very stubborn person. I'm very low in agreeableness. And I just loved the idea of like, there's this major that will teach you how to persuade people. And I was so attracted to that. I'm like, that would make me like unstoppable in an argument. Like I would win every argument I ever got into. Like that's the dream. And so, so I went into rhetoric and, it was also a writing type of major, where you're writing and editing a lot. And so my dad has a history in English. That's what he got his degree in. And so like he's been editing my papers since I was like in 4th grade, So if there's one thing I was confident that I could do well, it was edit other people's work, because I know kind of what it takes and kind of just the process of like going through that. So yeah, man, like there were just so many things that you can do in rhetoric because it's everywhere, just in the persuasion, the type of ethos you're giving off, like regarding your authority, how you're dressed for like an interview and everything like that. Do you want to come across as more serious, more relaxed? And it's just everywhere. And so that fascinated me. And it also gave me a trade if I ever needed to like do anything. I can be a freelance editor and like get work, hopefully.
Yeah. No, that's so true. And it really, you hit the nail on the head where rhetoric permeates in every area, every aspect. I mean, of course, as a lawyer, when you're defending a case or presenting a case, if you're working as, even if a news anchor, like all that, how you present yourself on TV, like, and basically every facet. I mean, I almost challenge people, show me a place where rhetoric isn't present or at least applicable to
everywhere.
Now, maybe what about rhetoric draws your attention? I know you and I probably have that same interest of just at first it's like that draw, like, oh, you can persuade anybody, right? And the power of the spoken word, but
Yeah, I think a lot of it was also, as much as I like to argue and persuade, I also don't like to be manipulated. And, I always wanted to find out like when someone's like, when I'm kind of getting screwed in a deal or something along those lines, and so I think rhetoric kind of gives you the power to see through a lot of that stuff. And that's something that also attracted me was, just from, just through going through life and childhood, you have those friends that kind of peer pressure you into doing things and all this other stuff. And I never really cared for that. And it's there in the office, it's there in politics, it's there in just like every facet of life. And so, that was the thing that really attracted me to rhetoric was by learning all the forms of persuasion. I want to be immune to them, even though that's impossible, but like I wanted to at least get as close as I could.
Right. Or at least be like aware also whenever of our own fallacies, especially like in debates,
exactly.
right? I mean, ad hominem debates, like, the slippery slope fallacies. I mean, all these different fallacies that are very easy to fall into that some of them we're not even aware that we're doing them. But now to be, I mean, growing up, especially when I first heard about rhetoric, it was through Plato, Aristotle, like some of these beginner courses in later in high school. And to me, I always relationed it kind of thought of it in terms of Harry Potter and Defense Against the Dark Arts.
Yeah.
Where in the whole premise of that is that class you learn, but you kind of essentially learn the dark art to learn against it, right?
Yeah.
Which kind of goes into this like Dr. Jordan Peterson idea of kind of recognizing the darkness within to be able to recognize it in others and then like defend against it.
Yeah.
And that element of rhetoric to me has always been so interesting, especially with like my background as a magician, that all it is just the manipulation of perception.
Yeah.
Like to me, my relationship with rhetoric is so intimate because it's like both applicable in like what I do, but also kind of how we live, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we connected a lot in that relationship.
Yeah, and that's a really good analogy for it. Also, one of the things that I think has benefited me just in rhetoric in general, especially being from someone who majored in political science, also, and you're surrounded by people who are political, they see everything as political, is that you honestly want to start. It started out as kind of like wanting to persuade people, but then you kind of learn that real persuasion kind of comes from finding common ground with people, and that because like you can't just say like, oh, you're wrong, shut up, and like that's going to persuade someone. No, it really kind of has to start off as like, listen, I understand what you're going through or what you think about this. I feel the same way too, or I felt the same way about that, and you can kind of like start kind of trekking along as your thought process to how you might have changed your mind on something or where you got. It's made me a lot more empathetic towards other people though, which is something, was definitely a byproduct. I did not go into rhetoric thinking like, oh yeah, I'm going to care about other people. I wanted to win. I wanted to win, damn it.
It's so true, right? Yeah. But I mean, that's actually a very acute observation because in magic, for example, the best magic is whenever you can put yourself in the spectator's position and see, okay, what is it that they're seeing, right? And so, especially in a debate, or if you're trying, convince someone or something like that, if you can really empathize with them and see where they're coming from. I mean, this is things that they'll present in like business negotiations and all that. If you can understand what it is that the other side is looking for, like what they really need, not only is it, I mean, in one way you could look at it as like manipulation, but it's also like how to best serve them too. Yeah. It's actually, it's so interesting. It's this double-edged sword that both can be used to cut, but also to heal in a sense, or to defend, right? Yeah. And so, I mean, it's helped me a lot in at the very least understanding like the mechanics of business and politics.
Oh yeah. And that's what it really is something that's been omnipresent in my life and has helped me out so much. And I didn't think it would, I thought it was just going to kind of satisfy this very selfish desire that I had to just, be an 18-year-old who was always right. But yeah, it really does just go into every single subject you can. It's almost like philosophy in the sense that it helps you to think clearly. And that's something I'm very glad that I have. And I really think has helped me just in whatever I'm doing. So yeah.
To follow that thread of like philosophy, because I mean, I would see rhetoric, maybe not the whole portion, but at least a good maybe pillar in my life philosophy. How does rhetoric, lend itself towards your larger life philosophy?
Oof. I mean, like, I guess from a philosophical standpoint, I identify most as like an absurdist, and that's kind of just how I live my life. But regarding rhetoric, I guess it's like I said, it's made me more empathetic towards other people for sure, and just kind of getting in their shoes and kind of just understanding why would they think that. And sometimes you can persuade yourself into their line of thinking just by seeing, like maybe they see, I don't know, something along the lines of some political issue. I can't think of one right now, but just some issue in general that like you might not have seen it in that way. And so that, like I said, it's just made me more empathetic, that's kind of how it's been, I guess. I can't really think of it in like
no, I'm so intrigued by the absurdist philosophy.
Yeah.
I don't really
it's great.
Yeah. Tell me. So, cause I'm still like, always learning on this. So I wouldn't know exactly how to characterize it, but how would you explain the absurdist philosophy?
Okay, so I think the absurdist philosophy's premise is that you call out to the universe for objective meaning, and it gives you silence in return. And so with that silence, you can take that in a lot of ways. A lot of people don't like the idea that there might not be an objective meaning or like an objective like creator to give you meaning, that's been bestowed upon you. And so that's the whole point of the absurd, is to look at that nothingness, accept it, and still choose to continue living. And not only choose to continue living and not kill yourself, but to be happy along the way and enjoy the pursuit of whatever you're doing, even if it is meaningless in the end, And so that's, I think, the whole philosophy of just absurdism and what it's about.
It's fun. It's interesting because I know in the word, I mean, it's kind of a funny word, absurd. Like, absurd. But it actually is kind of interesting because it does kind of put the responsibility back on the individual,
it's very,
right? And it's that idea of that, okay, maybe if it might be difficult to find that objective meaning out there, or just accepting that we never might know exactly if or if not there is that objective meaning. But at the end of the day, the responsibility lies on us on how we react to that. So I actually do like that portion of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the analogy that Albert Camus gives in the myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus is the Greek god who like rebelled against Zeus or someone, and they condemned him to the most meaningless task in the world, which was to push a boulder up a mountain just to watch it fall down again. And that's what Camus is basically saying. When you go through life, you are pushing this boulder up the mountain, and any task you have, it's meaningless in the end because you die alone. And so what he's saying though is, even though Sisyphus is doing this pointless task, you must imagine him happy. Because that's the only way you can justify his existence, and so it's just to live your life, honestly. And so like giving into the absurd would be, killing yourself. You realize it's totally worthless. Everything you do is, going to be forgotten in like 2 generations. People will forget your name in 3 generations, you know? And so by, Camus poses the question, I could kill myself or I could have a cup of coffee whenever you wake up in the morning. That's like the first question you ask. And that's the whole point of absurdism, is to look at this, accept the fact that there's no meaning, and you still choose to continue being happy in a meaningless universe and finding whatever pursuit gives you meaning.
So it made me think about several things. So, because also with Sisyphus, if I recall correctly, that was a punishment, right? Like that was essentially like his hell that he had to every day or every night, roll the boulder up and then bring it back down, or it would roll back down. And also, I can't remember what deity or what the name of this individual was, but whenever, I think it might have been Prometheus, where he stole fire. But anyway, he was like chained up in Greek mythology, and like his like insides were eaten out, and then like they like grew back in the night, and it just kept happening, over and over again.
Yeah,
that was his punishment. And so what I was mainly questioning there was, I don't know if they would actually decide to be happy or not. I know. I can't remember the name of the author. You said
Albert Camus.
That he argued that maybe the only way he could envision them being doing this task was to be happy along the way.
Yeah.
Because you do bring up that nihilist point, right? Where it's like, you could, the reaction to that truth, right? Or faced with that reality is like, okay, well, do then I just end it all, right?
Exactly.
Or even not even end it all, but just this nihilistic approach that, just nothing matters, right? Or this more absurdist mentality. But also, I guess because the parameter that changes really, or that intrigues me, is this idea of length of time, right? Like of scope. Because if you zoom out, 1 generation, 2 generations, 1,000 years, then all the lives change. You could create the most magnificent sculpture, and they would just eradicate. But what do you think about the juxtaposition of the long term to just the short term? So, for example, I'll give the example of like me doing a magic trick to like this like kid, right?
Yeah.
And like in that moment, they're like happy, right?
Yeah.
Before I tell them how to do the trick. What would you think that that happiness in that moment, even if they were to find out that truth later, is that meaningful or meaningless?
Yeah, I think that is meaningful. I mean, it's as much meaning as you want to prescribe to it. In general, just another idea I have is like, you hear about these like people who want to go out and like change the world. And how many of those people actually go out and like just change the world, and their name is remembered forever. I think the way that you live a good life and you create meaning is just by doing good in the micro. And if everybody can kind of just play their role and do good in the micro, that creates meaning and happiness in the macro, because you're in a happy society. I do think in that moment with the magic trick and making that kid happy, that's a genuine feeling. It elicited from him, that's absolutely real. It's tangible. It's there, and so you can't take that away from him. Even if he learns how to do the trick later, he can still, that might inspire him to do magic. I mean, it's the same people who like direct movies. There was probably some movie that like was really magical to them and they loved it so much they wanted to create a movie. They wanted to create something that brought them that feeling and give it to other people and spread it around, and when you learn how to make the movies, all the magic goes away because you learn just the mechanics of making that movie, how technical it is. The lighting gives this type of, ambiance in the room, or et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that was a real feeling. It was real meaning. And I think, that is a tangibly good thing.
Right. Okay. So, I just Yeah, 'cause we agree on that.
Yes.
We agree on that. See, I'm gonna persuade you. That's what. No.
Okay. Well, no, you persuaded me. You did really well.
We're finding common ground to persuade. No, because that's such a true point. Because I mean, I found this in myself where I had a phase where, first that initial like learning the magic tricks and learning how to do them.
Yeah.
I definitely had a phase of maybe a year or two when I would do the trick, but it felt almost as if I was manufacturing these moments where I knew that I could just do this routine of moving my body this way, do this trick here, and then boom, like smile, And it made me question like, whoa, like what is this? It's weird. This is what's so crazy with magic and this idea of like truth and lies, where magic inherently is a lie, but the effect it creates is real. Yeah. It's the same thing with a movie, right? Where you have actors, they're not even actually doing all these things. But, people can connect so well to them. Like, how many people can see Batman in the comics or in the movies and be inspired by them? Yeah. What do you think about this relationship of truth and deceit, or like truth and lies, and creating an actual effect in the world?
I mean, like I said, this is the first time that question has been posed to me. So, I'm kind of like, I didn't even think about it like you're manufacturing the happiness. That's a good point. But like I said, I think the impact matters more than the intent, Ooh, and so, like I said, with the kid, that was genuine happiness he felt. And if it's genuine, it doesn't really matter, because even if it is manufactured like that, you gave an altruistic reaction, even though you might have done it selfishly.
So let's scale this and scale the problem, right? So let's use that same example of like a magic trick, right? Yeah. I am engaging in a deceitful activity to create a positive effect for this child, right? Yeah. I think you can see where this is going with the noble lie, right? On a larger scale, let's say if you were like an ambassador or a high level senator, and you were posed with the situation of either lying or presenting a false, front or stories, for example, to the public. Yeah. But you knew it would have good results in the end. Like, the difference here is scale, right? Yeah. So how do we differentiate these two?
Like you're just saying, like, basically, do the means justify the ends? I think that's a really good point.
Because because you just said, I can't remember exactly what you said, but you said what matters is the intent at the end.
No, what matters is the impact.
Impact. That was
the impact at the end. Yeah. I think intent plays a role for sure. I'm not just gonna say like, if you do something like with the good intention and it goes bad, you're not just like totally to blame. But at the same time, there are things that have good intentions, even though they kind of backfire in the end. An example I give, and it's pretty hyperbolic, and I'm not just saying I advocate for this, but for a long time there was. So there was a plane crash, back in like the 70s or something like that. And so everybody died on the plane. And one of the issues that got brought up from that is that they didn't require children to wear seatbelts. You could just have your kid and you could just have them on your lap or whatever. And they said, oh, maybe the kid might have survived if we forced them to have seatbelts on. So they implemented regulation forcing the seatbelt on. So what that did was force parents to buy an extra seat, even if they didn't have the money necessarily. So what do they do when there's that extra cost there? They start driving. Driving is 10 to 20 times more dangerous than flying on a plane. That was like a 1 in 1,000 or however many situation. And so as a result, more people ended up actually dying that year because of that. And so that's kind of an intention of like example of when good intentions can go bad, even though there's negative impact. And so it's a tricky subject. It's not something I'm totally like familiar with or qualified to talk on whatsoever. But at the end, I think even if you had a bad intention in that magic trick, the impact was good. If the senator is doing it for shady reasons, but it produces something good in the end, I don't know. If it's good, it's good. But how often does that happen, I guess?
Yeah. And it's just more of a thought experiment, Yeah. But I mean, that's a great example of what you brought up. The idea of that you mandate, you regulate, and you have an extra seat. Now the child has to be in the seatbelt, but then the cost goes up. And yes, because it's not always, this bad thing happens, this good thing happens. No, like it's always great. And so yeah, that's a very interesting point.
Yeah, intent and incentive matter.
Incentives matter. Yeah, and I think you also hopped on a very important aspect of that too. That it's not. I mean, every part of it matters, right? Both the means, the end goal, and the intent along the way, right? Yeah. All three of these have to work in conjunction. And I mean, I just related back to your previous point that it's more of the importance of the micro instead of the macro. Yeah. I mean, let me reference him again, but Dr. Jordan Peterson, I've been watching a lot of his debates recently. Yeah. But I mean, it's this same premise, right? Like, how can you expect to change the world if you can't like get yourself in order first? And I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense too. That was the advice one of my professors gave me whenever he was helping me with my personal statement for law school. Ironically, he said, UT's motto is like, what starts here changes the world. And he's just like, that's kind of a cliche to use at this point. You know, like, honestly, how many people have really just like by themselves totally changed the world? And you can point to several examples, but they're the outliers. The middle or the 50th percentile, the most amount of people really don't. But you can still make an impact, I guess, in that sense, like, because if you do take care of the people closest to you, you do your best on just a daily basis, and you try to put more good out into the world than bad. If everybody does that at the same time, that's how, like, just overall macro good comes out of it. And so that's kind of the best thing I think you can do for that kind of society, is just play your role and put more good into the world than bad.
Yeah, I mean that's like the Boy Scouts, leave the campsite better than how you found it.
Yeah.
And also the Gandhi's, like, be the change you want to see in the world. Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's kind of funny that, these tenets that, even though they are kind of cheesy a little bit, kind of cringy sometimes, but they do evoke that still spirit of truth, I think, within them. Maybe a little bit of wisdom as well.
Yeah.
Too.
I heard you're moving to a new city.
This is true.
Where are you moving to?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be moving to Austin, Texas. Yes, sir. Here we go.
Okay. No, that's fascinating. Why Austin?
So a couple of reasons kind of all coincided.
Okay.
In this. So first, the biggest motivator throughout this was my brother and I, Eddie. We have our own company, our own video company, and we see just the most potential. And I'll get to how we got to this. We basically see the most potential in Austin as far as doing our style of video and for those types of clients. The second is that my other younger brother, Danny, he also is going to go to he's going to finish studying there at Austin Community College. Yeah. Finish up there. So while we're all there, it's just, it's easier.
Oh, okay. So all three brothers are going to be
all three
there.
no-sos are going to be moving. Yeah. So that's another big incentive.
No, that's really interesting. One of the things I've been reading about lately is just migration and immigration, and just like how people choose to move to where they're going to move to, And what I've learned is that it's rarely random, and like, we're really good at self-sorting each other out, So you're moving to Austin, which is a place just kind of flourishing with young, talented, creative people who maybe have a business-savvy mind and want to be in like a place like Texas or something like that. And so, that's very interesting that you're kind of going there, and like you're going to be kind of around like all these other like-minded people, who might be doing the same thing, but like, So you chose Austin. What other cities were you considering?
Yeah. Well, and let me also give some more reasons as well. But some of the other cities I was considering, I actually was looking into Colorado Springs and Denver. Those two.
Colorado Springs is random. I was not expecting that.
I know, but it is so beautiful there. I took a trip there last year, and it was amazing. Like, I love the mountains, and it was just the right balance, because I went to Denver 3 years ago, and it was good, but it was just a little too high in elevation. And Colorado Springs is still high, but not as high, I believe, as Colorado Springs. As Denver, so I might be a little bit wrong, but I still know that the Mile High City is known for that.
Yeah, so were you kind of just looking at places like aesthetically that you would enjoy living, and also you can kind of like do your business, do everything along those lines?
Yeah.
Or
well, thankfully with like video, because there are businesses everywhere, like, it's a very easily transferable skill to do, kind of pick up and go. The main question is that it's very hard for me to do that business alone without Eddie. We're half of 2x2, right? It'll be 1x1.
It just doesn't work. No dimension.
It does not work, right? No dimension. That was the other cities. And then just considering also we're looking everywhere, because I'd also considered just traveling again. But of course, the whole global situation. But but it was a thing where my favorite city that I want to go like live in and like at least visit for a good while is Florence, Italy. That is like the city. I'll get to more. But let me just finish the Austin part. And then the other reasons for Austin, two more, are just the entertainment side. Yeah. Where there's just a huge like stand-up, nightlife.
For sure.
And just being a musician and magician, like that, I want to kind of.
Oh, that's perfect for you.
Just jump in there.
You can jump right in then.
Like I just want to get up on stage and just see what happens. I want to try stand-up comedy. I want to try like music, magic. And the other is, of course, it's the capital of Texas, the political angle. I want to get more involved in politics, just getting in, at least even if it's like as simple as just joining the Chamber of Commerce and connecting with the city officials. I just want to be more involved in the actual political.
Yeah. No, that's a very good point. Another thing I've been really thinking a lot about is like what makes a good city, what constitutes a good city, what is a city worth living into, because I think a lot of success depends on your zip code. I think choosing your zip code is incredibly important and also very underrated, because just your zip code alone can put you in contact with other young people maybe doing the same thing. You can get help, you can build relationships, you can there's mate choice also, just for dating along those lines. There's work and stuff like that. One of the things I think would be my criteria for like finding a city, and this is from an urbanist I've actually been reading named Richard Florida, and he said a good city is a city that has a university and an airport. And it's like, can the formula really be that easy for finding a good city? But when you start thinking about it, though, like let's think about this. The airport means that people are coming in. There's a desire for people to come in there, and do stuff along those lines. There's also probably commerce and just industry there. So you have to, come in, come out, do whatever you want to along those lines. And the university attracts young people, young, talented people who usually the city is very good at retaining, and they end up doing cool stuff in the city, opening breweries, opening what were the things that were really crazy in 2016, like the lock rooms or like
escape rooms.
The escape rooms. And so, just doing like, who knew that would make money?
Such a good point.
But like that's kind of the formula he prescribes for finding a city is if you're going to move somewhere, make sure there's a university and an airport because, if you're going to be young, this is the time to live in a city. This is the time where all the opportunity is, all the careers, all your dating choices, all, if you want to go to school like that, it's and the culture in general,
Yeah, because I don't think, I don't know at the moment because I've not lived in Austin yet, but at the moment right now, I don't know if I would like to live like in a city, like within the city, limits, on a long-term basis, just because of how hectic it is. But I do know that I would still like to be in, close to
for sure
to it. And that's so, it's so true. Just the idea that, how many studies show that one of the biggest impacting factors on your future is just your zip code. Just where you're born.
It's so important.
The access to public education or private or whatever education you can grow up as, the different jobs and opportunities.
Oh, yeah.
And I like the balance that you were saying between the airport and the university because it's not just that people can come in, but it's also that the accessibility to travel also as well. And the university functions also where there's a consistent flow of young people, but also of new ideas, right? Of people willing to take risks in business.
And that's been throughout history, just all of just economic history and industrial history, the cities that have connections to other people and are able to be traveled to and have people traveling into them have grown the most because there is that share of ideas, people coming in, bringing in new ideas to make the city better, start businesses, etc. There's a truism in economics, and it's anywhere that there's a coastline, those are incredibly wealthy areas because of the fact you can travel to them. There's industry that can be brought in, ships can get to it, etc. Anywhere there's mountains, there's usually poverty. That's less true now because of just how globalized the world is and how easy it is to get to places. But prior to having that technology, if you were in the mountains, you were isolated. You had no one coming in, no one sharing different ideas, etc.
That's so true. I went to Tibet with Justin. This was 2017, and it blew my mind to know that the life expectancy rate, I think it changed about 30 to 40 years ago. Maybe just a little off on that, but 30 or 40 years ago, the life expectancy of a normal Tibetan citizen was only like 30 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so that was considered an elder in their community because they were so isolated. And only now in the past 30, 40 years has it slowly gone up to 50, 60 range. Yeah. It's incredible just to think of especially people who are isolated. Well, that's also a whole different scenario being so high up and everything, the Himalayas. But that just blew my mind to think that someone at 30 years old, that's like a year away from me. That you're an elder at that point.
It's really insane how a lot of that works, especially just from like where you are geographically. There can be other factors that obviously affect it, such as, conquests and just migration, yada, yada. But one of the reasons why Europe has succeeded so well, at least in terms of like adopting different ideas and why they've become a first world country in the first place is, just in general weather patterns and just being geographically blessed. And what I mean by like weather patterns are, Europe goes horizontally along the equator. Okay, so that means you have a pretty consistent temperature all throughout the country, while vertical countries, such as like maybe Africa or South America have been, you're vertical along the prime meridian. And so what that creates is really extreme temperature gauges and stuff like that. So you have deserts that you have to travel through. It's really difficult to kind of get through, to other countries prior to the technology and stuff like that that's come along. While in Europe, you could just kind of like travel through because it's pretty much the consistent temperature. You can grow the same foods and stuff like that. It's easy to get to everybody. There's no just like deserts keeping you apart and stuff like that. So
the consistency of being able to have a constant food supply that you can, or crops you can rely on, right?
Yeah.
And then also, that consistent weather patterns that it's not going to get too hot or too cold.
Yeah.
It also reminded me of, to your point earlier with the beach or coastlines, where I think this was in a Navy advertisement. I saw that says something like along like the lines of like 60 or 70% of the world's population lives along a coastline, or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that, I mean, that's just so true. I mean, and I've seen this, how many like National Geographic or Discovery Channel like documentaries where if the tides, or not, if sea level rose like 100 feet, how many people would be flooded out?
Oh, exactly. And yeah, so that's always been something that's kind of fascinated me, is just how like prosperity is kind of distributed. I mean, obviously now it's kind of like other places are starting to catch up, because Denver is one of the most sought after places, and it's in the mountains, and every millennial and their mother is moving to Denver now. So yeah, so it's just kind of interesting how your process was for just picking a city and just kind of getting sidetracked on that way of prosperity.
And I'm so excited. I mean, thankfully we've been able to kind of go down there like once a month to kind of start that transition process.
Yeah.
But it is the thing, I'm excited to actually fully move there, just jump in and just really kind of commit fully to just seeing what is that next level of life, so to speak. Where, I mean, a lot for me is also just having clear mentors, and also, I call it like the Rat Pack, like Frank Sinatra and the group, where just a group of contemporaries. Like I can't wait to really be among other guys that are kind of in that same vein, because.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Yeah, I'm just saying that's one of the best things that you can do is kind of immerse yourself among other people doing things like you, or just kind of similar to you. I mean, that's why all the countries or cities that are desirable to move to, it's always huge influxes of people that want to go there. And, you can make the argument because of like COVID, people are moving out of the city. I don't necessarily think that's the case, because I mean, like you have people that still want to do stuff. You have people that still want to come in and just do new things and like be around other people doing those new things. That's exciting. It's fun to do. And like,
and I guess to reverse the question, are there any cities you're looking into, or some ideal cities that
I mean, obviously, like the cities I'm kind of most comfortable in are Austin, just because I have lived there for a while. I have friends and family that are there. My dad went to UT also, and is just family there. Dallas also makes a lot of sense to me, just because I also have like friends and stuff like that in Dallas, from living there for a year. I guess some of the more like hypothetical and far-fetched cities I was considering that I probably wouldn't make happen, but I was just thinking about it. It's in the back of my mind. Would be a place like Nashville. I think Nashville is a really interesting kind of booming place. It's not just like overwhelming through everybody moving there, but it's still kind of like a happening place, and it's still relatively affordable, I think, in like the long term of those things. Another question I think would be interesting to think about is like, do you think there's kind of like a max utility or like a marginal utility for like the amount of people moving to a city? Do you think there gets to like a point where like it's not worth living in the city anymore because it's so like just crowded? You're beginning to get like diminishing returns in joy.
Yeah, no, I think that's so true, and I think every city needs to balance that.
Yeah.
And well, I think and it's different tiers of it, right? So for example, we're here in Sherman, Texas.
Yeah.
And I think Sherman, 10 years ago was still very much like a small town in a sense, right? But I think now it's crossing over to the threshold where it's like, it's
joining the Metroplex.
It's becoming like a small city, which is different than a small town, like as it grows. And I think every city or location kind of, has to find its tier, right?
Yeah.
And I think Austin is actually, now I'm just by nomads, so many people moving down there, Tesla and all this stuff as well. I think it probably might soon hit that cap. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, that's something I've actually really haven't found myself like thinking about, but like part of me wants to say like, just from as like someone who's lived in Austin and, just like wants to be like, oh, I was here before all of you, I want to say like, stop moving here. But at the same time, like when you realistically think about it, would I rather be in a city that everybody wants to move to or nobody wants to move to? And it's usually I'd rather be in a place where everybody wants to move to, because like that's kind of what makes these cities interesting, worth living in, when you're surrounded by all these people. And so I don't know, that would be an interesting question to think about, is like, do you get to that point? Because like the city that comes to mind is LA, just because of like how bad the traffic is, just how, LA just really hasn't invested in like apartments and stuff like that. It's a lot of single family housing. It's hard to find like, places to stay there. And so like that's the example of like a place where it's probably got a little too many people at that point.
I had this happen. I mean, this was a realization Eddie and I came to when we visited New York.
Yeah.
I think also, this is 2018, I think, where we visited New York City. And it was just the realization that this is amazing. It's great, but it's too much. Like just I remember just the drive from one place to another that, is not even that long, but all the traffic, the amount of people, they're so crowded. Madison Square Garden, the music, the nightlife, incredible, but it is that cost. Like the cost is just so high. Well, both financially, but also just the packed nature of it.
Yeah.
I think that to me was the clearest example I've experienced there.
Yeah.
The Nashville, I guess perspective is actually really interesting because one of my other good friends has talked about how Nashville is basically like the, like when they do, what do you call it? Like, not the bridal party, but
like where all the woo girls are,
yeah,
where they're the bachelorette parties.
Bachelorette parties, yeah. That's like the bachelorette party like capital. Basically.
I believe that. That's the first place where I saw one of those like biking, pub things, and I feel like that's drinking while driving, which is really illegal. But
it definitely crosses
they're everywhere. Yeah, they're wooing.
Weird lines.
Oh yeah.
I will say because I did some research into just Nashville as well, and they have like. If I ever were to own a restaurant, I'm not too much in the restaurant business, but if I ever were to do one, this would be the way.
Yeah.
I actually don't know the name of the place, but there's a restaurant in Nashville that has local magicians performing there every single night. With your dinner is a magic show included. And then for dessert, you get to actually go see like a full show.
Wow.
After. So you get like between them serving you plates and meals, you get magic, close-up magic. And then at the end, they do like a more formal like half-hour show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating though.
Like it's just like a fun thing.
When you went to New York, did you like it?
Yeah. No. Like the experience was amazing.
Yeah.
But it's just like how should I put it? It's like this wave. Like I like this part, did not like getting there. Like this part did not like
Oh, I see what you mean.
It was
like,
very high highs, but very low lows.
Oh yeah, that's a good way of looking at it too. Just like where everything like just going to a corner store or the grocery store becomes like an ordeal.
It's insane.
Like you have to go like do all this stuff, like get on the subway, go a couple blocks to like wherever.
Imagine buying a chair.
Yeah,
like just buying a chair.
Oh yeah, and like having to haul it up to your apartment on like the 6th floor.
How do you get a chair like this?
Yeah,
from, like it's insane. I mean, it's also admirable that it's like that, but it's crazy to me that. I mean, I love just also the Hamilton perspective with the history, knowing that there's so much history that goes back to New York
all those northeastern places are great. I think New York on paper is honestly the ideal city. I think they've done housing right. They're just a place that consistently wants people to come in.
Mm-hmm.
They've done a very good job of accommodating them in terms of like building housing, doing all that stuff, and. Yeah, just on paper, New York, I think, has handled everything correctly. It's just, living there is like another story. Reality, when you're in such a densely populated area, there's so many like trade-offs that come with that. And unfortunately, one of the things is like smaller housing, it's kind of harder to do that. It's not as a luxurious lifestyle, I guess, as like living in a place like LA with a lot of like single housing and everything.
Right. And especially growing up in Texas, like I just love the space of it here. So I'm going to do a rapid fire question here for you, but do you have any other questions? You've got some amazing questions.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, I got some rapid fire questions here for you.
I will try.
This is just kind of fun. Just, these can be one word answers or, shorter answers.
All right.
But tell me, what is something that makes you happy?
Ooh, what's something that makes me happy? Jiu-jitsu.
Ooh, very nice. How long have you been?
Just like about 2 years now, but it's great. It's great.
I like that.
Okay.
Tell me, Walter, what is something you hope to do, experience, or accomplish in the future?
Do, experience, or accomplish in the future. So I hope, obviously, to move back to a city. It would be nice to move to like a place like Dallas or Austin, and I hope to get my master's degree like relatively soon, so I can get a career. That'd be nice.
Very nice. Tell me a little bit about summer or winter. Which do you prefer?
Oh, I prefer summer for sure, just because like it seems like you can hang out with more people. You're not as isolated anymore, and it's just like I don't know. That's just when everything's happening. Everything's going on. Everyone's like awake and ready to do stuff.
And are you more of an indoor person or outdoor person?
I'm definitely more of an indoor person. I think another mark of like a good city is like there's no reason you should go outside. Like if you're in a good city, like I mean, obviously going into the streets, but you don't need to like go on hiking and stuff like that. Like that's the point of being in the city, is to not be in nature.
Yeah. Final question. Very difficult question. What is your favorite color?
Forest green.
Forest green.
Okay,
that's a very specific.
It's a very specific color. I'm very like there are a few questions where I have to give very specific answers on like what's your favorite movie, what's your favorite color, yada yada.
I mean, your outfit today is kind of green. Is it kind of more in that vein?
No, I think it's kind of more just like a blue stripe thing. I kind of just wear it because I never have a reason to wear this shirt. I never have a reason to like seem like I have my life together. But for this podcast, I did it for you.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, hey, Walter, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all the amazing insight you've given me. Always great to have a conversation with you.
It's great to be here, man. I'm so glad that I was able to return the favor for you being on my podcast. This made my life.
Dude, I'm so excited. Well, we'll get this out soon to everyone out there. And thank you again so much for being on here, Walter.
All right. Thanks for having me.